You can help solve the failure of discipleship in America by understanding how people learn. Life change takes place through using a proven process called LE²A, which leads people to apply learning to their lives. The process launches learning by actively engaging the participants' need or goal to change. Then you explore the truth, and then you explore personally how the truth might work in each person's life. Once each participant brainstorms ways that the truth could positively work in their life, each one chooses a step to do that week to apply the truth to how they live. Simple, right? Sure. But there's far more to skillfully understanding and using LE²A as a facilitator and a trainer. The problem is that American Christianity's speaker-centered approach extinguishes the effectiveness of the LE²A process. Launch. In a speaker-centered approach, the speaker tells an inspiring story of how the truth impacted their life or someone else's life. Often the speaker identifies a felt need or hook about how the listeners' lives are not working well and how the speaker has the answer for them. This speaker-centered approach doesn't extinguish all learning transfer, just the vast majority of it. Now, if the speaker's story is super inspiring, people feel something, and some remember the story. But even that rarely leads to the participant's own life story changing. In other words, little to no discipleship. A wonderful pastor once admitted he hated going to church leadership seminars, asserting, "Why would I want to listen to a guy tell me how good he did things and how I stink at it? Why should I learn how this other guy did it in a different community and culture but walk away having no idea how to do it in my own setting?" So for years, this pastor refused to attend seminars until he experienced a participant-centered, active learning experience that helped him apply the learning to his life and ministry. And then he became a raving fan. In participant-centered training, the participant's own stories, experiences, needs, and goals connect and motivate the participant to learn. Explore truth. Truth is vitally important, yet many learning groups never get past talking about ideas, debating theology. So essentially, no learning transfer happens, meaning no discipleship. In a speaker-centered 15 to 45-minute speech, the participants are quickly lulled into passive learning. Then what happens when the speaker asks a question? Well, often there's silence, and not the good kind of silence. Why? Well, sometimes the question feels like fishing for the right answer, which is often so obvious no one believes it's that simple. Or passive learners often daydream, so they're too embarrassed to answer. Or worse, they're sitting there with a nagging feeling of being talked down to. Does this speaker really think I don't know this? A well-loved speaker spoke passionately for 30 minutes to a group of Christian leaders, and the interaction in the closing discussion was robust. But you knew no learning transfer was taking place because people were either talking about ideas, or how they had taught the subject, or how they had done what the speaker was talking about. And no one related the truth to the present or the future, much less to a personal need or goal. Why? Because the facilitator operated from a speaker-centered modality. The speaker even asked fantastic personal explore questions, but no learning transfer was taking place, as evidenced by the people talking in third person. "Oh, I remember when Harry did that." Or, they went back to talking about ideas, avoiding any personal application discussion. Or, they talked about weaknesses they had but had learned to manage or overcome. It felt like interviewing someone and asking the question, "What are your weaknesses?" Everyone knows the answer should be weakness that you have already conquered or have a good management plan to minimize its effect, or better yet, you turned that weakness into a strength because that's how you get the job. The outcome of such a discussion is essentially no learning transfer because no present issues or goals are being discussed and no real growth plans being made. The result? The event cost a couple $1,000s and the combined Christian community lost over 100 hours of time, all for essentially no learning transfer or discipleship. If the facilitator had operated from a participant-centered modality, the participants would have identified their own reasons and goals for revisiting this topic, and the result could have been significant learning transfer. Apply. What one thing can you do this week to move toward growth in the area we talked about? Without apply, learning transfer, discipleship does not take place. Speaker-centered teaching doesn't allow the participants to brainstorm enough options for application to work for more than a few people at best. Even further, in most small groups and training seminars, application rarely happens. Oh, people may write something down that they are going to do, but their commitment to it is low because they've been passively learning, not actively learning, and they never fully owned their learning from the beginning. Or they just write something down because the speaker said they were supposed to write something down. And what is written down ends up in the circular file, not lived out in life. Further, learning transfer fails because there's little understanding of the processes that move knowledge to long-term memory and from long-term memory to living it out. After all, we can only apply what we remember. Before we go further, if you're finding this video helpful, click the subscribe button on my YouTube channel. Thank you. There are two large buckets of ideas that need to be skillfully understood to facilitate discipleship learning transfer. The first bucket is having a holistic model of discipleship change and how those changes happen. The American church famously pendulum swings from fad to fad, failing at holistic discipleship in its pursuit of the newest, better way to change lives. The second bucket is the principles of adult learning, which need to be skillfully, repeatedly sequenced throughout the LE2A training process, like active learning, revisiting, and desirable difficulties like spaced learning, generative learning, conceptualization, elaboration, and interleaving. If you are a pastor, have you ever wondered why cohort learning or training seminars led by pastors so often don't result in significant change? I've personally seen millions of dollars invested in pastoral training cohorts that yield next to zero learning transfer. Why is that? Well, it's because pastors are taught to sermonize, but few pastors are effectively taught how to facilitate training using adult learning practices. I've been in groups led by small group pastors from some of the largest, most successful churches in the nation who don't understand adult learning. So in good faith, they use passive learning and set up ineffective interaction. Yet if a pastor gets a training design that includes interleaved learning, generative learning, or another desirable difficulty, they're used to modifying curriculum, so they usually axe it because they were taught in sermonizing and teaching to make things simple and as sequential as possible. And learning transfer goes down because research shows that difficult learning results in greater learning transfer. Further, pastors generally have not been taught how to help people conceptualize and elaborate in successively complementary ways that build long-term memory and then apply that memory to life change. Instead, they or another pastor in the group generally talk, and everyone else in the room falls into passive learning mode, resulting in none of them effectively getting to the apply phase. Why wait to learn to improve learning transfer? Haven't we spent enough time and money, over $100 billion and over 1 billion hours every year in America, on teaching processes that cause discipleship to fail? Sign up today for the workshop Teaching You to Turn Learning into Changed Lives, a Train the Trainer bootcamp, and greatly increase learning transfer for discipleship's sake and make the time and money you spend more fruitful. So what will you come away with from Teaching You to Turn Learning into Changed Lives, a Train the Trainer bootcamp? Well, you'll learn how to design and deliver high learning transfer experiences through the practices of good adult learning transfer and participant-centered training. You'll learn how to engage needs and goals and make truth actively come alive for each participant. You'll learn how to work the LE2A process into your training design and facilitate people through to successful learning transfer. You'll learn how to use a holistic model of discipleship to specifically target the kind of discipleship change needed. And you'll learn how to move knowledge to long-term memory to a person living the truth out. And you'll learn how to design and sequence in-person and online training to maximize learning transfer. For more information, go to 5minutesToLead.com.